Hi everyone, welcome to my Spencerian Structures course. Thank you for trusting me to lead you through this beautiful script. I hope to accomplish in our lessons and homework an understanding of the fundamental forms and train your ability to perceive the negative space your letter forms create, so you may learn how to use that to develop your flourishes. I understand that as an online course, we all learn at our own pace, but I encourage you to participate on the forum, check out others' work, my feedback for your classmates, and support each other along the way. In this lesson, I will be going over the movement exercises I would suggest you practice and the lower cases. I can see from your baseline homework submission that some of you have more experience in this script than others, but I encourage all of you to wipe the slate clean and start from point zero. I don't mean forget everything you know, but take it as if it's your first time approaching the script. We will be working with pencil, and when we pick up our obliques, I ask that we all write in completely monoline, so no shades, for your course practice throughout this time until we talk about shades. Do not be scared to use your pencil to practice. Zahner clearly outlined in his book that some of our finest penmen, in their endeavor to get to be such, worked for hours attempting to draw a perfect letter before attempting to practice it. You must think good writing before you can execute it. So I would ask that you draw the letter carefully and perfectly as you can perceive it, using a sharpened pencil, and use an eraser to make corrections. This will get you a better idea of the letter forms, which is crucial before we add in the shades. The idea is that, say if I ask you to draw a square, you immediately have in your mind what a square looks like. You think 4 equal sides, 4 right angles. So if you put down your pencil and drew a square that didn't have a right angle, or one line is longer than the other, you will keep trying till you get that square on the paper. That is what I want to do with your script, for you to see what exactly is right in your brain, so that you will continue working on it, you will continue to change it until it looks like what your brain sees. First, I would like to talk about the muscles we use in this script. In the best writing, we use all of these muscles. So the forearm, in the front of the elbow, before your elbow, move your fingers. The upper arm, from your elbow to your shoulder, move your forearm. The muscles on your chest and on the back move the upper arm at the shoulder. So it is a combination of all these muscles working together to create rhythm and flow. When we write, we want to rest the hand on the side of the little finger. So usually between the nail and the first joint, somewhere right around here. This rests here to allow this to glide and guide your movements. There are exceptions, but in writing small letters, the little finger should slide freely, making most of the upstrokes and slide very little in making the downstrokes. There are no finger movements. What that means is your thumb, index, and middle finger does not move. The forearm, which is from your hand to the elbow, acts like a hinge at the elbow in making the strokes. So imagine that it's like a lever movement. Push on the pen when you produce the long strokes. The elbow can be right off the edge of the table, but the full weight of the arm should rest on the forearm muscle. Here are some of the movement exercises I would encourage you to do. The reason I do not like calling these drills is because I feel like it adds a lot of burden when I hear that word. It sounds like you have to continuously drill yourself into doing it. I do not do all of these on here, on the handout. What you want to do is try all of them and see which one you need the most help with. So what I mean by that is, say, this one is the capital stem in all monoline. This I would I think everyone should practice this because it's very hard sometimes as a beginner to get this compound curve right and get this into a perfect oval. So these strokes have to be consistent. You can do all of these with a pencil or with pen and ink. I will demonstrate for you the first one, and keep in mind that this won't look very delicate because I'm using Moon Palace, so it shows up on camera. I would encourage you to use Iron Gull or McCaffrey so that you get used to that clean, delicate hairline. Try to keep all three of the outside loops oval, and you may certainly continue this exercise. I just want to demonstrate how it's done. Do not have a loop on your O. Make sure that it's closed at the top. It meets right here. Comes out. This whole time, my finger is not moving. I am gliding on this space between this joint and my nails. For these lines, the letter L and L-I, L-U without the dot here is so you can practice that rhythmic movement and try to keep all the loops the same size. This practice will also help you understand your spacing and train your extended loop letters. In this one here, it's an extended loop up that would apply in letters like F or H or L, and then a down one, an inverted extended loop in letters like G, J, Y, and Z. When you do this, keep this stem long and straight and try to keep all the loops the same size. This one is a very good practice. It helps you to mentally visualize and put that into your practice, how to do concentric ovals. So this one comes in right near here, and you want the spacing to be consistent in each one. This will help correct a lot of the common mistakes in the capital letter O and a lot of your letters where the oval stands on its own. When you do your capital stem one, keep your ovals here horizontal. That means if I were to draw a line right through here, that bisects the oval, this line would be straight. So you cannot have something that looks like this. These three I will come back and talk about after I go through the principles. This one, it seems very straightforward, but this is very important that you can understand how to just draw an oval that is 2 times width versus 3 times height. So technically it's an ellipse, but it has become a common term to call it an oval. Exercises like this one and this one helps you warm up your hand and get your hand used to that rhythmic oval action. The key to doing these ovals is not to do them super fast. The quantity is one of the goals, but it's not the only goal. The quality is a goal that we want more. So what not to do is you don't want your ovals to look heavy. And start slanting in different directions, like what I'm doing now. You can see some of these ovals are heavy on one side and some are non-existent on the other side. The reason for that is you are drawing them. You want to think about it as your nib isn't touching the paper. The ink is. And that means lower your nib angle. See, before I was like this, drawing it. You want to lower your nib angle. Practice the oval exercise clockwise and then counterclockwise. The goal is to have them uniform in size and spacing. Also the slant. The slant should be determined by you, as everyone has a slightly different natural slant, but try to keep the slant consistent. You should rest on the muscle in front of the elbow. Another good one to practice that will really help with gaining your rhythm of the lowercase is the straight line exercise. You're pushing and pulling the forearm in and out, somewhat diagonally. After you make a section about 2 inches long, shift the paper to make another. Do not ever try to write across the page with the elbow and paper in the same place. Either shift the paper or shift the elbow. This is your comfort zone. Adjust your tools so that it fits in that comfort zone. The goal of these exercises is not just to draw ellipses freely and forcefully, but also to gain a light, delicate touch so that all the lines up and down are equally thin. The figure eights are a good way to practice rhythm as well. Do not aim for speed at first and lose your quality. So do not start doing this. They all look different, right? The point is, listen to the sound that you're making, that your nib is scratching. Listen to the sound. Is it rhythmic? At first, if you start out at this speed, just to, oh, my arm is like, I understand what I'm doing this. And then gradually speed up. And try closing your eyes. You would be amazed at how much your hand already understands. And you will find that your hand keeps on going. It's not as hard as you think it is. This one is a very good practice to understand spacing. So the goal of it is to have the lines parallel to each other. And finally, the most important one of all, the cross drill exercise. The point of the cross drill exercise is not just to give yourself an understanding of the spacing. It also trains your hand to understand that rhythmic movement. Spencerian is not like shaded script, like engrosser script, where you're writing each stroke, lift your pen, write again. It's a rhythmic movement, just like the push and pull action we were doing before. So this really helps you train that. Each person's distance between each of the letters will be a little different from another person, and that's completely normal. The key is to find your rhythm. Do not print this out, what I show you here, and trace it. That does nothing to help you. You need to catch your own rhythm and understand what that is. So usually you would write 10 letters, 10 lines of them, turn it around and write between them. I will, for demonstration purposes, show you a little corner of it so you can understand what to do. So you can pick any letter. You can pick M, N, or any letter you're having trouble with. M, N are usually better for this exercise because they're not letters where we stop and lift the pen. So it goes something like this. And then you would turn around 90 degrees to you and think about where your letters are so that it fills in these spaces equally. Do not, when you do these cross drills, forget about the quality of your letters. So in order to have this kind of like Richter scale motion that is levered using your elbow, do not start writing ends that are like completely wrong. Okay, the key is to develop a rhythm. Next, I would like to go over the principles in the lower cases. The word principles sound very boring and unrelatable. However, if you learn how to do each of these accurately, you will have a very good form in your lowercase. Despite the fact that I know we all can't wait to get to the beautiful capitals, it does nothing if you have beautiful capitals and horrible lower cases. So here's the way how P.R. Spencer broke down Spencerian. The first principle is the straight line. The angle that it should be on is 52 degrees. The second one is the right curve or the under curve. So what that means is in this oval, we're having the under part, the black portion of this oval. So in all of our entrance and exit strokes, we need to be very cautious which one is it that is leading up to the letter. For example, if this right curve followed by the letter O would look very out of place because it would be two ovals bumping into each other. But if it's the left curve, where it's the top part of the oval, it would naturally lead to a letter O. When you combine the right curve and the left curve together, you have this direct pointed oval, or some call it the semi-angular oval. So it has literally the left curve and the right curve, or the left curve and the right curve in the opposite direction. And unlike in grosser script where we want nothing to be pointy, in Spencerian we want semi-angular. So your script should not look sharp, but it should not look rounded. Number 4 is the extended loop. 4 spaces tall with the entrance. This is all one stroke down. This stroke here is completely straight and on your 52-degree slant. The space, the widest part of the loop, should be around 1.5 spaces if we consider this portion one space. So unlike shaded script, I know many of you are coming from shaded script, we go like this, lift the pen, push the hairline up, shade down. This is one continuous movement. Now that we understand that, I want to go back to these exercises. This you can see here is a right curve, straight line, right curve, straight line, right curve, straight line, which if you added dots would be the letter I. This is the fundamental movement, and this is a very good practice because you want to keep your right curve apparent. This cannot be a straight line or a left curve. In this one, it's a right curve, straight line, with a more angular point. Here is the left curve, straight line, and this allows you, instead of coming this direction, to go the opposite direction to practice that hand motion. You can see from my movement exercises that a lot of it is based on the letters. And that is my philosophy, that if your end goal is to write letters and not draw ellipses or ovals, you should be practicing and breaking down your letters in your warm-ups. So when you do these, be very careful and make sure that each of these are a part of an oval and the straight lines are completely straight. Based on the principles, Spencer divided these letters into 6 groups. So the first group is the letters I, U, and W. They are grouped together because they're composed of straight lines and right curves. So get used to the idea what the right curve is. It's the under curve. It's the curve that's on the bottom of the oval, going up. As I go through these lower cases, you will see that I use the height measurement of one space versus how many spaces. One space, the idea of one space is the height of the letter I without the dot. That's the standard measurement for the height of all letters. So the letter I is composed of right curve, straight line, right curve, and a dot. When you do the dot, it is not a circle like this. You gently press on the point as if you're going to begin a downward line and move quickly. It's like a little teardrop shape. When you practice, I want you to practice the letters like so. First, in pencil, the right curve, straight line, right curve, dot. Then in pen and ink, even for the letters that can have shading, practice for now without any shades. Right curve, straight line, right curve, dot. If this is your first time writing Spencerian, it might be a strange concept to you that we don't retrace the lines. So in engrosser script, we would retrace part of your entrance stroke. And here we do not retrace because we want our letters to look delicate, and the script is meant to be done fast. It's a script designed so that we do not stop and retrace another stroke that we already did. The letter U is two I's without dots. So it's composed with right curve, straight line, right curve, straight line, right curve again. That's the letter U. So you can maybe start to see now that if you practice right curve and all of your right curves were perfect, if you practiced your straight line that is always on slant, your right curves, your left curves, you can have very exact letter forms. You want your letter U's to have equal distant curves. So the distance between here and here should be the same. And instead of having this part as an oval, you want it to be semi-angular like so. The best way to practice these letters is to practice them big, so you can really understand the forms. This is the letter I, and write the letter I again to form the letter U. When you feel like you can accurately do this, to understand the letter forms, I want you to, in your natural rhythm, this should be about the speed that you want. That's a bad one, not consistent. But you want to hear that sound. The letter W is the letter U. So just like what we did before, two I's. Plus a dot at the top and a horizontal right curve. So the oval here would be this direction. The horizontal right curve here, this little loop, should be half the space of your X height. So half the space of the letter I. The second group letters are made up of left and right curves and straight lines. They are the letters N, M, X, and V. The letter N is composed of a left curve. So think about, here could be your oval, straight line, left curve again. Notice how I do not retrace this line down. Straight line, right curve, and that makes your letter N. Now between here and here are the two turns that we have to be careful of. You want your turns to be short, And the only way for you to do that is to have a continuous motion in your pen. You want these turns to not be round like that. It's all semi-angular. So not sharp, but angular. The letter M is just like the letter N, 1 space tall and 2 spaces wide. Make sure that your 3 left curves, so here, 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 are the same shape and the same distance apart. So if you completed these potential ovals here, they would align up. The 3 straight lines should be parallel and the same distance apart. And you want your turns here to be uniform. Avoid when you're trying to do the rhythmic movement of your pen in the continuous motion. Be careful not to have M's like so. You don't want sharpness. And study carefully whether or not it's the left curve or the right curve beginning the letter. I would encourage you to practice in these groups because Spencer grouped them together for a reason. They have similarities that when you practice, it can help you with the other letter in these groups. A good way to practice your N and M and train your consistency in that is to write NI and MU. You don't have to dot the I's. The idea is that when I write NI, for example, when you turn this around, they should still look like MU and NI. Now the key to doing this consistently is to not envision these letters as these letters. That's why I talk about breaking each letter down and really remembering what it's composed of. So when I say NI, instead of seeing the letter N and the letter I, which can be confusing when you do the spacing, think about left curve, straight line, left curve, straight line, right curve, straight line, right curve. Then you are just doing parts of these principles so that your letters can definitely be consistent. The letter X is a very strange letter. We all want to make it a lot wider than it is, just like in grosser script. It's not as wide as you think it is. Now, the good way to practice this is before you start your letter X, do a letter N and cross it right here. Okay? And then, might be easier if I did this in pencil. Cross it. You erase this part. This is how wide your letter X should be. Left curve straight line on the 52-degree slant. Right curve and straight line. Do not do this straight line crossing as a downstroke. It will result usually either too heavy or too long when we go fast. Do not try to do this letter continuously without lifting your pen. Make sure that your letters are as delicate as you can possibly make them. The letter V, left curve, straight line, right curve, dot, horizontal oval, right curve. So again, if I completed this right curve oval potential, it could look like this. Make sure that your curves are of the same height. The most common mistake in this is to make this straight line somewhat oval shaped. So do not do this. Make sure that this is not bulging
It's a straight line on 52 degrees. The third group letters are more oval shaped than the others. For the letter O, it's a very, very crucial letter to be able to do right. So when you do this letter O, you begin with a left curve at the tip of where you ended, left curve down, right curve, closing this oval. My nib got caught there. Let me start again. Left curve, right curve, closing in. So this point is not completely oval shaped. It's semi-angular, and we end with a right horizontal curve out. So strictly speaking, this left curve, the angle that it is on, as I demonstrated here, is 34 degrees. And make sure that your O isn't too fat, like that. The width of this should be half the width of its height. The key of this letter, again, is to turn at the bottom with a continuous motion. So it's a good idea when you do your cross drills to practice it with the letter O as well. The letter A is the basis of many other letters to follow. It is one space tall, one space wide. And your ideal, technically speaking, your letter A should be your left curve up should be at 27 degrees. The second left curve retraces half of your beginning left curve. Like so, right curve up. Joins here angularly, just like the letter O, with a straight line. And finishes with a right curve. So here is the first time we're talking about retracing here. When we retrace something, if you look at Spencer's work, he wrote his Spencerian with a quill, so it is quite different from a steel nib. The goal of your letter is to be as fine and delicate as possible. So in some cases, as we continue, I will say retrace or lift here. So the purpose is if you can gain a light enough touch to retrace without looking like you retraced it and have a big ink blob there, you can certainly retrace, or you can choose to lift your pen. The letter E is one space tall and 1/3 of a space wide. So here again, you want to refrain from retracing anything. You do not stop. So here you start with a right curve, left curve down, right curve up. Think every time you make these shapes, until we think about shading, think about the right curves. I want you to see in your head when I talk about this, or when you practice, I want you to see, instead of a letter E, I want you to see this. Right curve, here's the oval. I say left curve, here's the oval. I say right curve again, here's the oval. I want you to see the part of the oval you are creating. This will be crucial if you want to flourish. So when we write this letter E, the joining, oops, a little off there, should be at 1/3 from the baseline. It cannot be too high or too low. The letter C is composed of a right curve entrance, lift the pen, dot, just like the letter I, a little teardrop shape, pressure down, lift. Not as dramatic as this, but I wanted to show you if I did it dramatically. Something like that, but very, very tiny and delicate. Dot, curl back, left curve, right curve. You may also do it like this, and then come back to finish the dot. But make sure, if you do that, since you're retracing this, that I cannot tell that this has been retraced. It needs to look like a hairline. Make sure on the curl that you're not doing it too heavily. It's just there, delicately existing. It's not a heavy dot. The fourth group of letters are the R and S. They are the semi-extended letters. The letter R and the letter S are very good practices to help you keep proportions in mind. It is 1 space tall, half a space wide, and the top of your R reaches up to 1/4 of a space of your second line. The key to practice this is not to have this space here too wide. Always think that this is half the size of your X height. A right curve, a compound right and left. So the principal 2 plus 3. Left curve, right curve. So again, I want you to see here's a good way to practice it. Okay, so here's what I would like you to do, exactly like this. Draw it huge so you understand. It is very hard to do this compound curve on a smaller scale, but if you understand it, it's much easier to push yourself to be able to achieve that. The shade, when we start shading, starts here. So you don't want this part we call the shoulder of the R to go too far down and the shade is too low. So if we cover all of this up, this would still be your letter I. And you want to ask yourself, this is your X height. So half is about this much. So is this half the same? No, it's not. So you go back, you erase. I know this sounds very elementary, but just trust me, it is very helpful for you to draw out your letter. So this is how I want you to practice. And then come back with your ink and do all of it in hairline motion. The letter S is, like the letter R, half a space tall, half a space wide, and reaches up 1/4 of a space. It begins with a right curve, compound curve. So think, if compound curve is hard for you to execute, think this is your left curve. This is your right curve. You can stop because you're just practicing. It's okay. Right curve. Now I'm going to draw my left curve. Okay. And now I'm going to draw my right curve. So that made your compound curve. Come back in, dot. You can retrace this if you can keep it light, or start from here barely touching, right curve up. The goal is that the widest part of this oval here is at 1/3 from your baseline. So carefully draw out your letter, just like how I did here, so that when you approach it with your pen and ink, it won't be something like this, so wide and disproportionate. This is clearly not half of that, but this is half of this. The fifth group of letters are T, D, P, and Q. And here I included 2 versions of the letter Q. You may choose to practice the one of your choice. For the letter T, right curve up, straight line on your 52-degree slant. You are retracing 1 space. This letter is 2 spaces tall. You're retracing with your straight line 1 space of your right curve. Right curve up and cross. There's so many fancy ways to cross this, so people don't really think about this anymore. But the pure Spencerian, the way Spencer taught it, is that your crossing is 1/3 space from the top line. So here's the top line. Here's your second ascender. 1/3 of this, so it's right here. And you want this cross to be 1/3 of this crossing on the left side of your straight line. 2/3 of your crossing on the right. So when you do this T, be very careful that your straight line is on slant. If you do it too perpendicularly, we have the tendency of doing our straight lines straight, perpendicular. And if you practice when you line your paper to line it at 52 and draw those slants, you will get accustomed to drawing straight lines on that slant. The letter D is one of those letters that begins with a letter A. So left curve, right curve. So what do I see? Oval here, left of the oval. Oval here, left of the oval. Right curve, right of the oval. Okay, so letter A. You may lift your pen and draw a straight line on your slant and right curve up. Or you can retrace half the length of this letter. The key to making the letters like D and Q correctly is that you have to have a solid letter A. So it's fundamental that you practice in order. The letter P is 3.5 spaces tall. Many people ended so it's 3 spaces tall, and that's not correct. It's 3.5. The width of this letter is 1 space. So you begin with a right curve, that reaches up 2 spaces. So what do you see? Do not see the letter P. See this humongous oval. Straight down 3.5 spaces. Left curve. Straight line. So here you're kind of creating what we had in the letter A. It's semi-angular. This straight line needs to be parallel with your main straight line. And right curve up. So this distance should be equal. The letter Q is 2.5 spaces long and 1 space wide. It also begins with the letter A. Straight line down, 2.5 spaces. Right curve up. Right curve up. The 6th group of letters consists of all the extended loop letters. So it is crucial before you practice these to have your extended loop down. So in the principles handout, it's the 4th principle. So here's your extended loop. Right curve. Straight line on 52. This is 1 space. That's 2 spaces. And that's your extended loop. Now, left curve up. Remember, no retracing. So once your pen hits the bottom, left curve up. Little oval that you can see in your head. Straight line parallel to this. Right curve up. If you cover up the extended loop, you should have your letter N. Practice your loop separately so that you have the rhythm to push your loops up high, come down. Push your loops up high, come down, and try to make them stay consistent. The letter K is an extended loop, left curve, right curve. So that's the semi-angular principle 2 plus 3. Straight line, parallel with your straight line here, right curve up. Make sure that your letter K is not too wide. This should be half the space of your X height. The letter L is an extended loop plus a right curve. Make sure that this is a straight line. There is a tendency for us when we draw these to become a little bent. They're not bent curves, they're straight lines. If you find yourself having trouble with these extended loop letters, break down the extended loop. Line your paper and start drawing straight lines, and then do your right curve at 2 spaces tall. Then combine them. The letter B is the letter L with a dot and a horizontal right curve. The distance between here and here is the same. Now we're going to invert our extended loop to the bottom. So in letter J, for example, right curve, extended loop. This should be half a space of your main portion. So do not make your loops too large. So if you're having trouble with this warm-up exercise will be very helpful for you. Now I hope you can start to see what I mean by pick and choose your warm-ups. If you're not having trouble at all with extended loops, work on what you're having trouble with. The letter Y is an inverted H. So when I turn this around, you should be able to see a perfect letter H. So the concepts are exactly the same as H but inverted. Make sure that your 2 straight lines are parallel, the 2 curves are similar, and turn it around to check for consistency. So a good way to practice the H and Y is this. Write alternatively HY, HY. Then turn it around to check your work. It should still say HY, HY. You know, when we write fast, we start to compromise the shape and size of our loops. It is crucial in good calligraphy, in good Spencerian, or in grosser script to keep the loops the same size. You can do it. Anybody can do it. If you just give it a little more attention, you are able to gain consistency. One of the things you may have trouble with in the letter Y is keeping this distance a little too wide. Think for yourself that it's a letter N with an extended loop. Not exactly, but that's the spacing that you should keep. The letter G is again a letter A, lower extended loop. So you can practice A, G, D, Q all together. And you should be able to identify the consistency that they're all formed with the letter A's. So what that means is if I did this, they're all A's. I can come here, add a loop, do that, do an opposite loop. So these are good letters to practice together. Also a good idea for you to practice is letters with upper and lower loops alternating. Not just the H and Y, but also all these letters in the 6th group. You can do H, J, K, Y, L, G, B, Z, and F, and turn them sideways, like so. And you should be able to see the same size loops. on everything. The last two letters are the Z and F. The Z is like the letter N. The reason I say this, and I know it's mentioned in the handout, and I want to emphasize it, is because it's that there's a tendency for us to make this loop on the Z somewhat bigger. It just feels more natural to the hand. They are just our natural tendencies, at least for me. So think for the letter N, that's the right spacing you want. Short upper turn. So you want to invert your extended loop, but you don't start, at the straight line like we did like in the letter J. It's a little coming in and then your inverted extended loop. The letter F is 5 spaces tall. So think again, when you practice your extended loop, it's all straight. The tendency is for this F to either not be on slant or to have this straight line bent. Invert a loop, come up to the middle, and a horizontal right curve. So in your B, V, F, these horizontal right curves are potentially this shape. And this distance is 1 space. So it's the distance of your X height from your straight line to the end of your right curve. Your extended loops are half a space. And when you do this right curve, it should come right in the middle of your first line. Keep the loops the same size. So in the warm-ups, when you see this, what you can also do, this is an upper extended loop plus a lower inverted one. You can also do it, you can do a N and an F and an upper and inverted. These exercises to me are more beneficial than trying to achieve super fast oval drills because you actually need to write these letters. These are more applicable. So for homework this week, I would like you to practice all of the lowercase letters. And I know we went through a lot and it sounds daunting. And to save you from singing the alphabet song, it is all covered. I have a tendency to do that when the first time I saw all the groups. Practice them in the groups that they're in. There's a reason why Spencer grouped it that way. And it makes a lot of sense once you really break it down into the left curves, the straight lines, the right curves. First, begin your practice with the warm-ups. Try all of them. The one that is absolutely crucial to do is the cross drills. Master penman Michael Soul's teacher, Paul O'Hara, used to make him do cross drills for 10 minutes straight before each lesson. I want to emphasize this again, that you do not want to trace mine. Even if you enlarge it, you want to write your own. Your spacing will be different, your rhythm will be different, and that's good because that makes your writing unique. Try all of them and do them with a pencil and then do them with ink. Then move on to practice the principles. And I know the principles sound very simple. They're just straight line, left curve, right curve. But I want you to practice them with your ink. Just lightly, straight lines, left curve, right curve. Understand that rhythm, envision the ovals. Then I want you to practice all the letters, go through the handout, go through each one, write them out in pencil, then do everything in monoline.
When you write them out in pencil, you may use guide sheets, and I will give you to a link for you to make your own guide sheets online, or you can draw your own slants. But the key is, do not rush into the shading. Keep everything in hairline. I would like to see, when you submit your homework, all your letters from A to Z written with pencil and pen and ink. When you submit your homework, submit it in the week 1 homework, not the week 1 corrected homework. Once I correct it, I will move it to the week 1 corrected file. And you may feel free to post your practice work. I may not, grade them, but I will give you feedback if I see you doing something that should be corrected or improved on. So feel free to post multiple 3 posts. You can even take, say, like if I was just doing these warm-ups, take a photo of your warm-ups and post them. They do not have to be perfect. We're all work in progress. So show your practice work, and it will help me to see where you need to focus on. And I hope you guys all have fun practicing your lower cases. And if you do post your work on Instagram, please feel free to tag me and hashtag Spencerian structures so we can all see each other's practice work and encourage each other along in this journey.